Truth, all you can do is find false, drop it and get rid of it, and eventually when you can't get rid of any more false, what you're left with is the truth. How much false can you find? Because there's lots in history. I was looking around the internet and came across the images of the 1893 Chicago World Exposition, and it blew my mind because it looked like ancient Rome in the middle of downtown Chicago. And as I looked at it further, well, here's another one in Philadelphia, here's another one in St. Louis, in Buffalo, in San Francisco, and then as soon as they were done, they tore them all down and threw them in the garbage. That just told me there's something wrong with all of these. The story of the expositions is a gigantic lie. And I think it's so huge of a lie because I think they're right at a bridge point when so many things about the 1800s that seem strange and weird, right as this sort of period ends of unbelievable strangeness, and all of a sudden these fairs spring up all over the world with impossible buildings we're talking about, which are colossal structures. Chicago built 700 acres of fair in supposedly less than 2 years. St. Louis built 1,200 acres of exposition buildings. One of the buildings in Chicago, the manufacturer's building, would house 300,000 people. There's a giant statue in the middle of the lagoon. It was called the Golden Lady, and it was known as the Statue of the Republic. It was 65 feet tall. They say it was covered in gold leaf that had copper underneath, but others speculate it was actually made out of solid gold. So you're talking 65-foot high, potentially solid gold statue. We're talking giant structures and looking like ancient Rome with towers and domes and columns and the most fine, ornate pieces to them in these record, unbelievable times. Then as soon as they're done, chuck them in the garbage. Like Jackson Park is a swamp. So supposedly they had to drive down tens of thousands of wooden stakes in order to support the weight of everything. They dug out massive lagoons, lakes. They had a canal system that ran through the entire exposition. They also had an above-ground electric train. An electric train, well, where's the electricity coming from? That's running around the park. They had a moving walkway down by the shore. Not enough people are asking, where does this technology come from?
Just to frame it, if I'm not mistaken, the Chicago Fair was the first time people had seen electric light.
Tesla's the one who got the electricity contract for the Chicago Exposition, and it was certainly more than all of the lights anyway that were in New York City at the time were at the Chicago Exposition.
Now, it must have been mind-blowing for most of those people who had only seen gaslight or candlelight at night to see that city lit up in such a way. Again, Hathaway, it's 1901. We are told, whether it's true or not, the idea of being able to electrically do anything hasn't been around that long.
And this fair is bizarre. This is supposed to be Tesla's fair, where he managed to somehow move electricity from Niagara Falls to Buffalo for the fair. No one's really explained how he actually did that. And at the middle of the fair is a 395-foot-high electrical tower, on top of which, of course, is a female golden statue called the Goddess of Light. That this thing was lit up by some suggest 500,000 electric light bulbs. Again, when you look at the photos of this thing, it's just, where do they really get the power from?
I mean, think of what it would take today if you had a place with no electricity and no way to pipe it in. The generators that would have to be built.
For example, there's a building that went up for the Barcelona exposition in 1888. It was claimed to be the fastest built building in the world. 5,000 square meters, capacity for 2,000 guests, 600 rooms, 30 apartments, and it was supposed to be built in 53 days. This is supposed to be a time of horse and buggy. The 2-year building times are actually impossible unless the two most likely theories would be either A, they had a technology that they're not supposed to have, and it really was built in that time frame. Even if they built them, they had to build them out of marble and stone in record time, or the buildings were already there. They'd been there for hundreds or thousands of years, fixed up, refurbished, repainted, hence the term whitewashed, which is the term that was used for the Chicago Exposition, which was paint all the buildings with this brand new spray paint that they had just developed to spray paint all the buildings in record time, so you couldn't tell if anything was old or anything was new.
How long did these things tend to stay open? When they built these things, supposedly over 2 years, which is the narrative, how long were they there for?
About 6 months.
6 months for the public to come.
And then what was amazing, for example, in St. Louis, 2 days after the fair ended, they brought in a demolition team from Chicago with explosives and blew the thing up. They actually used dynamite to blow it up, and they say threw it in landfills. The things like the World Fairs shows there was a time in our past, and even not that far in our past, where humans seemed to be at a completely higher level. Human living and human knowledge were constructed into the buildings using cymatics, using sacred geometry. These fairs, they're so important to study because the history that we know right now as history was invented at the time these fairs were going on. One of their underlying nefarious purposes was to teach a historical narrative to the population that they were supposed to believe and agree with. And scarily, the world we're walking into today is in some way, has its origins during the time of these fairs.
These various pictures from the world's fairs are just remarkable of themselves. But when they laughingly tell us these were just temporary structures, built for just a short time to be torn down thereafter, who in anyone's right mind would put this much detail on the side of a temporary structure to be torn down a few months later? No one does that. We can't even craft something like this, temporary or otherwise, today. No exposition halls look anything like this today, or ever will. And these were all over the world. Absolutely nothing temporary about these. An absolute travesty what they've done to our true history. Question everything, friends.
Devices on some of these, like you have here in Paris, the Eiffel Tower. They had some interesting things on the Eiffel Tower. You have this device here. These seem to be in the center of a lot of buildings, a lot of these old cathedrals and other buildings. And some say that they harnessed energy somehow from the ether. And of course, we had Nikola Tesla, who helped out with some of these world fairs. And he was able to transfer electricity quite a distance for the Chicago World Fair. He would obviously have known about these devices as well. Why aren't we able to read his scientific journals anymore? Why was his publications removed? Why was there other ones? There's also, even in religion, some people that they had writings that were very popular in their time. They were actually known to be some of the most important people. All their writings are mysteriously gone now, folks. You know what I mean? Maybe they knew something we're supposed to know about. You know what I mean? So you got Nikola Tesla. He knew about this, obviously. He probably knew all about this technology. Maybe that's why he wrote about it, and now that stuff's not around. It doesn't make money. You know, it's kind of interesting when you can't make money with something. If you know how to pull the electricity from the ether, and it doesn't cost any money, it doesn't help out those who are, up there that want money. Like the World, of course, Economic, Forum, those guys, for example, those are a good example of some people that wouldn't like it. Free energy? Are you kidding me? Look at this. Look at this building right here. What in the world? See how small these people are? Look at this building. Does this thing even exist anymore? This is the Palace of Transport World's Fair. This is one of the buildings they got rid of, folks. How in the world did they build this? Look how small these people are. Look how humongous. What would you even call these? I mean, I guess you would say they're columns. Those columns are as big around as a house. Those columns are bigger than houses. My house is probably smaller than one of these columns. And look how you can see that it has a ton of artistic design, architectural design to it, even though we're very far away. They said they built this in 2 years, and then they just got rid of it afterwards. Here's another one of those devices. I mean, I probably could do 50 hours on this, man. This stuff's absolutely stunning and amazing to me. Here's another building. I think this might be the building. Is this the same building that I was showing back here? Maybe. Maybe it is. It might be. No, I don't think it's the same building. I think this is a different building. Yeah. Just look at that. Imagine if they had a full color video, just how amazing that would look. And what's the lighting they use? They had electricity back then as well. Nikola Tesla helped out with some of that. Just look at how big this building is. I've never seen anything that big. How far away is that? Is that like a mile away? maybe not a mile. I don't know what it would be. That looks like a mile almost. That is very long. That is a very large building. Let's just put it that way. That's a very large building. And in some of these buildings, of course, they kept for their parliaments in various areas. I think Canada, that's what they did with one of these buildings. Some of these buildings they just got rid of. In Chicago. Here you got another thing. Look at that. Who would build this? Just, what is this? A little water fountain type of thing. Absolutely stunning as well. And you saw look how big it is compared to these people. And now let's go back to that one I showed you. Where was that at? I have too many of these open. Right here. Just look how big these columns are. It's just unbelievable. The people look like ants versus the columns. Yeah, they just built that for the World's Fair there in St. Louis. This was in St. Louis. Yeah, this was St. Louis. Have you ever seen a building like that? Just unbelievable. Okay, so, of course, World's Fair in Paris, France. And, of course, they use these fairs to teach people about our history. How convenient. Let's remove history while teaching them about a new history, folks. Let's remove these buildings. Just say we built them in 2 years. In some cases, in a swamp area, which is impossible to build in. We'll just build these grandiose... You didn't build these buildings. You didn't build any of them. Don't give me that. And, of course, they keep a couple of them for the nice buildings, you know. For example, one of them that we have for our Prez. Yeah, that was one of them, too, as well, from what I can tell. Because it actually goes farther down underneath the ground as well. I've seen pictures underneath. It goes very far down. And it has columns down there as well. Okay, look at this thing. That's in Paris as well, 1889. I think that's way bigger than some of these football stadiums. That looks like you could hold the entire Olympics in that thing. Yeah. So, of course, they have them also just these weird columns. And, you know, you don't ever see anything like this anymore. It's just like right in front of it. It's like, you know, there was a completely different history back then, folks. And it makes you wonder, because there was no people hardly in the early 1800s. Then all of a sudden you have this booming population with all these grandiose buildings that were there before they even came along. And then all of a sudden they have to have these world fairs where they tell you all about your history, while then taking, of course, down these buildings, which they tell you they just built themselves when they didn't. I wonder what they taught back then. Did they teach them some evolution? What else did they teach them? You came from a monkey, buddy. These buildings, just ignore them. We built these for you. Just so we could talk to you for 2 days. And then we're going to get rid of them. Even though you're the size of an ant next to the building. Yeah, okay, dude. And, of course, never mind Tesla. He didn't know what he was talking about. Einstein knows everything, okay, folks? That's how it works. It's just really curious. Of course, Einstein helped to promote their models and their ideas. Whoever went along with their program and got them things that made them money, they're the ones that ended up with the job in the end, folks. And those that were trying to actually perpetuate maybe what was already going, free energy, for example, those guys are gone. You know what I mean? It's kind of interesting how that works. Not really surprising, actually, considering where we are today. All right? You know, I would have loved to have been back then just to see this whole thing. And, of course, you have all these pictures with a sky that has nothing in it as well. And I've shown numbers of pictures of those. I would have loved to see what the sky looked like back then as well. I'm really curious. Again, have you ever seen a building that long? It just seems unreal.
This image clearly depicts some sort of siege with an army camp and a fortified town being attacked. I picked this image because it has what looks like an ark to me. It is simply labeled as Procession of the Japanese. It could be a carriage for a person of importance, but at first glance I thought ark. Also worth noting is the giant stood on the front, way bigger in stature than all the other people in the image. He looks twice as tall as a horse. Everything else is to scale, so I have no problem taking his size at face value. This image is labeled Fireworks of the Tartars. At first glance I thought it looked like an electrified city, but this is still impressive. We can see all kinds of different fireworks surrounded by high-rise buildings with ornate architecture, and what looks like possible antiquity tech. I included this map to give weight to the fact that these images are extremely accurate. This body of water is the Black Sea, and I could easily find the locations on a modern-day map. Take this forked river for example. The area is called Poti. Here it is on a modern-day map and it is still called Poti. I think we can safely assume that all the rivers and settlements on this map were accurate at the time of its creation. At first glance of this image I was taken back by the sheer size of these two 20-feet giants. I believe this to be some sort of courtroom. Unfortunately, upon reading the notes, I believe these two giants are labeled as great silver idols. Does this imply that they are giant statues made out of silver? Still very impressive, but I therefore cannot say they are real giants. This image is labeled as very beautiful tomb with 3 gates in a hill near China. I included this image as I found it interesting and did not know that the ancient Chinese used hills as tombs. I would like to explore these Chinese burial mounds or burial hills in a future video. This image is labeled as Clothes of the Women of Oriental Tartary. I was more interested in the tent in the background. Does this imply these particular Tartars are nomadic? I don't think so. In such a vast empire, traveling from A to B would take time, and tents would be necessary when traveling long distances. I believe the name of this image translates to Houses of the Tartars Pulled from Carts. A very interesting image, but what stood out to me was the size of these camels. The men barely reach the top of their legs. Surely these are bigger than normal camels. You can see that all the other animals are to the correct scale. According to the University of Kansas, fossils of giant camels that lived over 2 million years ago have been found in North America. 8 feet tall at the shoulders, these camels lived in woodland areas and ate leaves off of trees. Unlike modern camels, which live in desert environments where trees are scarce, gigantic camels did not have, or need, a hump or humps used for storing food. Could this be an image of gigantic camels thought to be extinct over 2 million years ago? This image is labeled as the Palace of the Grand Cham. The only reference I could find to the Grand Cham was a novel written in 1922 that is set in Turkey. However, the occupants of the palace in this image do not look Turkish to me. Neither does the architecture for that matter. I chose this image due to the amazing fountain. Is that a real tree? I don't know. I see no visible pump. This is an amazing ornate fountain. If that is a real tree, I have no idea how they would accomplish this. A quick Google of the most amazing fountains in the world today tells me that this fountain would be up there with the best. I see very few fountains around today that would rival this. I don't think I can emphasize enough how amazing I find this fountain. There are many more interesting images in the book and I encourage you to check them out for yourself. But I like to keep my videos short, so I will end on this map that is titled, The Great Tartary, just to show how immense this empire or kingdom was. It stretches from Finland to China, and it's filled with named places. The mainstream narrative is that Tartary was a blanket term for unknown tribes and such. I would suggest a lot of them were known judging by this map.
Cold darkness reigns on all. It rains in Arkansas. Wounded love, destined soon to fall. She stays in front of him, caressed by howling wind. Enemy, victim of the unknown. But from her eyes, so dark and shallow, he needs no words at all, but she wants him to know, really what a tortured mind still hides. The truth is even worse, a present with no hope, soon to end, so hard to accept.
You know who Henry Kissinger is, right? Kissinger or Kissinger. I was just wondering why on his book, on the cover, he has like the the World Order book, Character of Nation and the Course of History, World Order. And you see the Hyperborea and Tartaria maps. You see, Henry Kissinger, by the way, he's super important in the history of the 20th century. I mean, everything is in front of you, everything is given to you. So, according to the intelligence of our human species, this is a temporary structure, as per official statements. Chicago, 1893, the Columbian Exposition. And this is a temporary structure in Japan. As you know, Japan is a country that builds lots of temporary buildings because that's their urban planning. So, do you actually believe this? Like, how come we in the 21st century, in the late 20th and 21st century, we're supposed to be so super awesome, but we built such pathetic things, and then the people in the 19th century, they built all that and they say, oh, that's just temporary. Those huge buildings out of marble and towers, that's what remains of the previous human civilizations, and the expos were just an excuse. But hey, who am I? Oh yeah, so this is just for you to understand that you can call it Egyptian if you like, whatever you want. The point is here, you see the people, the slaves. So you and I, we're the people here. The people who we fight every day. Flat earthers versus globe earthers and all that stupid stuff. And yeah, the typical day-to-day life. We don't agree, we fight. And then of course we have a leader who control us, and that leader is controlled by another leader, and that leader is controlled by a superior leader, so it's like a hierarchy. So at the end of the day, it's a never-ending story. Do you get the point? I guess you understand, the puppets and those who we call leaders, they're actually puppeteers. They're actually puppet of the puppeteers, and then the bigger puppeteers are puppets of other puppeteers. So hey, I hope you understand. So this is just to point out that Africa and South America as continents were one and the same. Yep. and then Africa goes also in the Indian Arabian part of the world in Asia. So yeah, everything was the one main continent. Of course, check Vibes of Cosmos, he tells you lots of things. Also to tell you that in stone, the previous civilizations, they just showed what they actually had, their controllers. So they had, like, for example, in this case, a guy who dives. So yeah, that technology and the guns and the tanks and everything else that existed for a very long time. So nothing is new under the sun. This is the world before Russia, so you can see it says here La Grande Tartarie. Unfortunately, then everybody on YouTube feels such like a wise guy and such an intelligent person. They call Tartaria everything, because that's the way to go. Like if you make a false conspiracy, just keep on doing the same conspiracy. I see so many YouTubers and people, even like people who will follow my channel, you go like, oh, Tartaria, dude, it was just a region. Okay, don't call everything Tartaria. But anyway, that's, if you call it Tartarian, it's not Tartarian, it's just the same architecture. But anyway, old San Francisco City Hall is supposed to have been built in 1899 and destroyed in 1906 by the earthquake. So again, was this really built in 1899? Come on. No, this was there beforehand, built by a previous human species. But anyway, who cares? And this is like the city hall from a different perspective. Again, who cares anyway? Because it's destroyed. So once it's destroyed, it's a part of the past. So nobody cares. Also, the Fine Arts Palace, right? Also in San Francisco. You see the bridge there, the famous bridge. By the way, the earth is spinning with curved water, so this water is curved, and because of the spinning, the bridge is okay. So yeah, this building that shows like Roman Empire building. So what's like a Roman type empire building? We call it Roman because that's the indoctrination we have. Do you see the uncomfortable questions? I mean, they're not uncomfortable for me, they're uncomfortable for the big majority of the human population. But anyway, this is a human chess game played in 1924. That's why in St. Petersburg, you have like, even today, in the square is divided like that with the lines, because it was meant to be a chess game for chess. So this took 5 hours and it was a draw. So just to point out how puny and tiny we as a human species are compared to the builders of the previous human civilization. They actually play chess with us. They can play chess with us. So awesome. Yeah, 1924. And even today in the square, you see the same division. So my question is, who is lying, right? So we have the Hiroshima nuclear bomb aftermath, which is not even nuclear, because you can call it nuclear, but not in the sense of radioactive. So we know what happened in Hiroshima in Japan, in Nagasaki. And then we have the Chicago in the States. You compare both pictures, they're exactly the same. So which means that because the end result of destruction is the same, it means that the same bombings were used, because Hiroshima was used, the bombs were used to destroy it. So that means that Chicago was not just an actual fire, it was bombed. The question is then, who bombed Chicago? Uncomfortable questions for 19th century big American cities. So this is Myanmar, also known as Burma. You can call it Myanmar, one of the poorest countries in the world today. And you have these buildings. Now, whatever you make of these buildings, you can accept that they're just meant for religious purposes, for like people who are bored and they just listen to the orders of an emperor to build them, and then with the slaves and stuff. I mean, it's your choice, to be honest. Who cares anyway? Because you just live in a fantasy and a genetic experiment. So, hey, this is the Cathedral of Christ the Savior. It was located in Borky, near Kharkov, which is today's Kharkiv. I guess if you watch the news about Ukraine, you know what Kharkiv is. So this was in 1980. This picture was taken in 1894. And it was destroyed during the Second World War. So, by all means, if you actually believe and want to accept that this is for religious purposes, for Christians, Orthodox Christians, like Jesus Christ and God and all that stuff, I mean, it's your choice. I see a power station with infinite electricity. Electricity back in the day was forbidden for the Mr. Nobodies like you and me in the field and stuff. So, cathedral windows compared to cymatic sound frequencies. Do I even have to explain? The cymatic sound frequencies, the sound creates this frequency. This is the piano note, first octave. Also in water, you see the same pattern. There's like lots of stuff. So, then again, the question is, why do cathedrals, where you go to pray, for your sins, religion, Jesus Christ and God. So why do these, why do they have the same shape as the cymatic sound frequency? So that means that the cathedrals, which are supposed to be the place where you go and declare your sins to God, they're not meant for that purpose. They were actually power stations and using the vibrations, the importance of those windows. And those windows were probably not with no glass, just like the typical structure, because there was no need for glass because the temperature outside was not like winter. There was no winter back in the day, so difficult stuff. Cities under cities. The big question is, why do they build our human species? They built a city on top of an old city. So why? Just to cover the past, and so you don't know why. I want to know who lived there before. No, it's forbidden. Okay, so if it's forbidden, let's move on to the next.
The old world really knew how to get around. Whether the moving sidewalks showcased at the World's Fair or the more above-ground approach. These beautiful works, amazing infrastructures, impressive architecture, has all been squandered by us, the inheritors. It only takes a few generations, a few very short generations, to erase all knowledge we have of our true past. A history that paints a picture of a true budding utopia. Oh, what could have been? Research the mud flood and fall of Tartaria. Question everything. This is not the history we thought we knew. Our true history lies buried in several meters of mud. Seems like every time we dig, we discover more grand temples and structures that doesn't align with the mainstream narrative. They tell us these unreplicatable temples of grand beauty were just buried and forgotten. Or what you're seeing far below ground level of many buildings is nothing more than just basement windows. But for the awakened few, we know the truth. For those curious, research the mud flood and fall of Tartaria and dig up our true past. Question everything, friends.
spaces. What are we living for? Abandoned places. I guess we know the score. On and on. Does anybody know what we are looking for? Another hero, another mindless strand behind the curtain.